The Grand Hall of the Galactic Alliance shimmered under the light of 1,000 silver lamps. It was a place built to inspire peace and unity among the stars. Tall banners from every known civilization hung from the high ceiling. The air carried a faint hum from the energy shields that protected the massive station orbiting above a blue gas planet. Delegates and rulers from more than 40 species stood in clusters, talking in hushed voices. The annual Peace Summit was about to begin. Among them stood Princess Arya of the Veyran Empire. She was tall, graceful, and her silver eyes reflected the light like polished glass. Her species valued strength, control, and pride. To the Veyran, emotion was weakness, and humility was a flaw. Arya wore a crown of living crystal that pulsed softly with her heartbeats. Her guards stood behind her, silent and motionless. At the far end of the hall, a human stood alone near the great window that showed the swirling storms of the planet below. His name was Rian. He wore the silver armor of Earth's Peace Corps, a symbol of honor earned through many battles. His armor was not decorated or covered with medals. It was plain and practical. The kind of armor meant for someone who valued purpose more than appearance. Few in the room noticed him at first. Humans were new to the Alliance. Their homeworld had only recently joined the Great Interstellar Union after surviving a long and brutal conflict with the Zorai Dominion. Many species still saw humans as reckless and unpredictable. They admired human bravery, but feared their stubbornness. The summit began when Chancellor Ellen of the Drossen called the room to order. She floated gently above the marble floor, her body glowing like soft mist. Her voice echoed from every corner of the hall. Today we celebrate a century of peace among our peoples. Let this be a reminder that unity is our greatest strength. Applause filled the air. Rian clapped once, quietly. He did not enjoy ceremonies, but he respected their purpose. After several speeches, the attention turned to Princess Arya. Her empire had played a large role in maintaining the balance of power. She stepped forward to speak, her voice clear and confident. "My people have always valued strength," she began. "The peace we enjoy now was not given freely. It was earned by those who proved their worth in battle and in leadership. Yet I have seen a troubling pattern among some of our new allies. They hide behind machines and armor instead of facing challenges with their own strength." Her gaze swept across the room, until it settled on Rian. The pause that followed made every delegate look in his direction. "Take the humans. For example," Arya continued, "their soldiers wear layers of armor, their ships are covered with weapons, their leaders speak of courage, but never step into danger without protection. Is that true bravery, or only fear hidden behind metal shells?" A murmur rose through the hall. Some of the alien delegates whispered to one another, unsure how to react. Others seemed curious to see how the human would respond. Rian stood still. He did not move or speak. The light from the window reflected off his armor, making him look like a statue. Chancellor Ellen shifted uncomfortably. "Princess Arya." Perhaps Arya raised a hand to silence her. "I mean no insult," she said, though her tone carried the weight of arrogance. "But if we are to honor courage, we must also question it. Is a warrior still brave when he is shielded from pain and risk? Can a species that fears its own fragility lead others into peace?" The hall fell completely silent. Rian turned his head slowly toward her. His eyes were calm, his face unreadable. He walked forward until he stood at the center of the hall, where all could see him. His steps were heavy, each one echoing against the marble floor. When he spoke, his voice was steady and clear. "Princess Arya, may I ask a question?" She lifted her chin. "You may." Rian looked around the hall. "Tell me," he said. "What is armor?" The question surprised everyone. A few delegates exchanged puzzled looks. Arya frowned slightly. "Armor is protection," she said. "It shields the weak from harm." Rian nodded. "Then by your words, it is not weakness to wear armor. It is wisdom to protect what matters." Arya's silver eyes narrowed. "Wisdom is not the same as strength. A true warrior does not need to hide behind tools. The body and mind are enough." Rian looked at his hands. The metal gloves glinted in the light. Slowly, He began to unlock the seals on his armor. The plates opened with a soft hiss. The crowd gasped as he removed the chest piece, then the gauntlets, then the helmet. Beneath the armor, he wore a simple dark uniform. He placed each piece carefully on the floor beside him. When he stood unarmored before the assembly, the room felt smaller somehow. Everyone could see the scars on his skin, the signs of battles fought long before the summit. His eyes were steady and quiet. It's the kind that had seen too much and survived anyway. This is what stands inside the armor, Rian said. Not fear. Not weakness. Flesh and blood. We wear armor not because we are afraid to die, but because we want to live long enough to protect others who cannot fight. He looked directly at Arya. You mistake purpose for fear? You think strength is proven by how much pain one can endure. But true strength is measured by how much one can prevent. For a moment, no one spoke. Even Arya, who rarely showed emotion, seemed unsure what to say. Rian picked up his helmet and held it in his hands. This armor has carried me through storms, through battles, through loss. Every dent and scratch on it is a memory of someone I refuse to let die. You call that weakness. I call it duty. Then, without another word, he placed the helmet on top of the pile of armor. He bowed slightly to the Chancellor, then turned and walked toward the exit. The sound of his footsteps was the only noise in the room. No one dared to stop him. When the great doors opened, the light from the corridor spilled across the floor. Casting long shadows behind him, Princess Arya stood frozen. Her guards looked uncertain. She wanted to say something, but pride held her back. The words she had spoken echoed in her mind, and for the first time, they did not sound as wise as she had thought. Chancellor Ellen broke the silence. Perhaps, she said softly, we have much to learn about the meaning of courage. The summit ended early that day. Delegates left in quiet groups, their faces thoughtful. The news of what had happened spread quickly across the station. Some mocked the princess for her arrogance. Others praised the human for his restraint. Rian returned to his small quarters on the lower deck of the station. He sat beside the window, watching the stars drift by. His armor rested on the stand beside his bed, gleaming faintly in the dim light. He touched the chest plate gently, as if greeting an old friend. He had not been angry at the princess. He had faced worse words in the war. What troubled him was not her insult, but the pride behind it. He had seen too many worlds fall because their leaders valued pride over understanding. The next morning, packed his belongings into a single travel case. He left a short message for the Earth representative, thanking them for the opportunity to attend the summit. Then he walked to the docking bay and boarded a small civilian ship bound for the outer colonies. As the engines roared to life, he looked one last time at the shining halls of the Alliance station. Somewhere inside, the princess was likely still thinking about their exchange. He hoped she would remember the lesson. When the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, the stars stretched into lines of silver and vanished. Rian leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. He was done with speeches and councils. The real work was out there, in the forgotten worlds, where people needed help, not words. He would go where he was needed and do what humans had always done: build, protect, and endure. Back on the station, Princess Arya stood alone in the hall where the confrontation had taken place. The armor still lay where he had left it. No one had dared to move it. She stepped closer and studied the metal plates. They were heavier than they looked. When she touched them, she felt the warmth of lingering energy inside. For the first time, she wondered what kind of strength it took not to fight back, but to walk away with dignity. A guard approached her cautiously. "Shall we remove it, princess?" Arya shook her head. "No, leave it. Let it remain as a reminder." The guard hesitated. "A reminder of what, princess?" She looked at the armor again and said quietly, "Of what courage truly means." Outside the station, the gas planet turned slowly, its storm swirling in endless motion. The galaxy moved on, unaware that a single moment of silence had just changed the course of two lives, and perhaps the understanding between two species. The small transport ship drifted through the dark stretch of space between the settled worlds and the frontier. Its engines hummed softly as it crossed the border where the maps ended and the stars grew distant and cold. Inside the ship, Rian sat near a narrow window, his hands resting on his knees. He had been traveling for several weeks, moving from station to station, always farther from the bright center of the Alliance. The news channels still spoke about what had happened at the summit. Every message board, every political program repeated the same story. The alien princess had insulted the human warrior, and he had answered not with anger, but with silence and action. Some called it an act of pride, others called it wisdom. Rian ignored all of it. Words did not change lives. Actions did. He spent most of the journey working with the crew. The captain, an old miner named Taro, appreciated Rian's quiet nature. The ship carried supplies to the human colonies scattered on the edge of known space. These colonies were poor and forgotten, far from the protection of the Alliance. Many had been built during the war, when humans fled to survive. After peace came, most governments abandoned them. "You sure about going there?" Taro asked one evening as they watched the stars from the control room. "No one goes to the frontier unless they have to." Rian nodded. "That is why I am going. The people there need help." Aro smiled. "You humans are strange. Always running toward trouble." Rian looked at the window. "Someone has to." When the ship arrived at Colony Haven, the sight that greeted them was bleak. The settlement floated above a rocky planet covered in gray dust and weak sunlight. The main station was small, built from recycled metal and old transport parts. Some of the outer walls flickered with failing power fields. Rian stepped out of the ship and breathed the recycled air. It smelled faintly of metal and burnt circuits. The people he met looked tired, but determined. They wore patched uniforms, their hands rough from labor. Yet their eyes held the same light he remembered from the war. The light of those who refused to give up. A young mechanic named Lena approached him. She was thin, her hair tied back with a piece of wire. "You are from Earth?" she asked. "Yes," Rian replied. "I came to help." She looked surprised. "No one from Earth comes here anymore. The Alliance forgot about us." "Then we will remind them," he said. Over the next weeks, Rian worked beside the colonists. He repaired power grids, reinforced defense walls, and taught them how to maintain old machines. He trained a small group in basic combat and survival. He refused any leadership title. He told them that every person could lead when they had the courage to stand for others. At night, sat by the window of his quarters and looked at the stars. The same stars that once looked bright at the summit now seemed distant and silent. Yet here, among these people, he felt more purpose than in all the grand halls of the Alliance. One morning, a group of children gathered near the workshop where Rian was fixing an old energy turret. They watched him with wide eyes. One of them asked, "Mister, are you the warrior who left the princess speechless?" Rian smiled slightly. "I do not know about that. Mother said you were brave," the child said. "She said you walked away from a princess." Rian shook his head. "Walking away is not always brave. Sometimes it is just the right thing to do." Lena, who stood nearby, laughed softly. "The children here love stories. The traders bring news from the core worlds, and you have become part of the legend now." "Legends fade," Rian said. "What matters is what we build today." Unknown to him, that same legend had reached the Varan Empire. Princess Arya had not forgotten their encounter. For weeks she tried to focus on her duties, attending meetings and managing her empire's affairs. Yet the image of the unarmored human walking away stayed in her thoughts. The court advisors tried to comfort her pride, saying the human was foolish. But deep down she felt the sting of truth in his words. One night she stood on her palace balcony looking at the stars. Her guard captain, Kale, approached quietly. "Princess, you seem troubled." Arya kept her gaze on the horizon. "Do you think we truly understand courage, Kale?" Kale hesitated. "We were taught that courage is facing pain without fear." Arya nodded. "That is what I was taught too. But what if courage is more than that?" She turned to him. "Find out where the human warrior went." Kale bowed. "Yes, Princess." Weeks later, a report reached her desk. It contained the location of Colony Haven and a brief description of the settlement. Arya read it several times. The idea of traveling there felt strange. A princess had no reason to visit such a poor and distant place. Yet she could not ignore the pull of curiosity. She made her decision. Within days, personal cruiser, the Saren Light departed the Varen homeworld. The journey took several weeks, crossing sectors where even Alliance patrols rarely ventured. When the ship finally approached the Haven system, Arya stood at the viewing window. The planet below looked small and lifeless, a lonely gray world under a pale sun. Her aide frowned. "Princess, this place is beneath your station. The people here are not our concern." Arya's voice was calm. "They will be mine for a short time." The cruiser landed near the colony's main hub. The arrival of a royal ship caused a wave of surprise and panic. The colonists gathered in the open square, uncertain how to react. Rian, who was overseeing a repair team, arrived soon after. He recognized the crest of the Varen Empire on the ship's hull and felt a sense of quiet disbelief. When Arya stepped down the ramp, she wore simple armor instead of her usual ceremonial robes. The wind from the planet's thin atmosphere whipped her silver hair around her face. She looked different from the proud figure at the summit. Her eyes searched the crowd until they met Rian's. The colonists whispered to one another. Many of them had heard stories about the princess who had insulted the human warrior. Now she stood before them, far from her empire. Looking unsure for the first time in her life, Rian walked forward and stopped a few steps away from her. "Princess Arya." "Warrior Rian," she said. Her voice was steady, but her expression showed humility. "I came to see what you have built." Rian looked around at the settlement. "It is not much, but it is ours." "I heard that you left the Alliance and came here to help these people," she said. "Why? They were forgotten," he answered. "I could not forget them." Arya nodded slowly. "You could have stayed in the core worlds. You could have been honored for your service." Rian smiled faintly. "Honor does not feed the hungry or repair broken walls." The colonists watched in silence as the two spoke. There was no tension, only quiet respect. Arya walked through the colony, seeing the small gardens, the machines running on old power cells, and the people who worked together without complaint. She had never seen such unity among her own kind. At sunset, she found Rian near the edge of the settlement, looking at the horizon. The sky was orange and gold, and the planet's twin moons hung low. "I thought you hated me," she said softly. Rian turned to her. "I did not hate you. I only pitied what your words revealed." Arya looked down. "I was proud, too proud to see beyond my own beliefs. I thought courage meant standing above others, but now I see it can also mean standing beside them." Rian nodded. "Pride can blind even the strongest heart, but understanding can heal it." They stood in silence for a while, watching the sunset. Arya felt a strange peace, something she had never felt in the halls of her empire. These people had little, yet they had something her world had lost long ago: hope, built from shared struggle. That night, she joined the colonists for a simple meal in the communal hall. They talked, laughed, and shared stories. Arya listened to their tales of survival, their dreams of a better life, and their faith in one another. For the first time, she saw humanity not as a species of fragile creatures, but as a living example of endurance and spirit. Later, as she prepared to return to her ship, she turned to Rian. "You were right. We mistake pride for strength. But what you and your people have built here is something far greater." Rian looked at her calmly. "It is not about being right, princess. It is about learning." She smiled faintly. "Then I have learned much today." Before leaving, Arya addressed the colonists. "The Varen Empire will not forget you. I will see to it that supplies and aid reach this place. You have shown me that strength is not measured by titles or weapons, but by unity and will." The colonists cheered quietly. Touched by her sincerity, as her ship lifted off, Arya watched the settlement grow smaller through the window. She felt a sense of respect for the human who had once walked away from her in silence. Now she understood that silence. It was not pride. It was peace. On the ground below, Rian watched the cruiser disappear into the clouds. He hoped that the lesson she had found would reach more than just her heart. Perhaps one day it would change an empire. He turned back toward the colony, ready to continue the work that never ended. The stars above shone bright and cold, yet to Rian they no longer felt distant. For the first time in a long while, he felt that humanity's place among the stars was beginning to shine again. The stars over the Veyron capital world burned brighter than ever, but Princess Arya felt only shadow in her heart. Weeks had passed since her journey to the human colony. The visit had changed her in ways she did not yet understand. The laughter of the colonists still echoed in her memory. Their strength, born not from pride, but from unity, had shaken everything she once believed about leadership and courage. Yet when she returned to her grand palace of crystal towers and silver gardens, people around her remained the same. The courtiers bowed deeply and spoke words of flattery. The advisors filled her meetings with reports and numbers, always speaking of control and strength. None of them saw what she had seen. None of them cared about the people who worked in the fields or the miners who labored on the outer moons. Every morning, Arya walked to her balcony and looked at the wide sky. From there, she could see the glowing rings of the planet below and the lines of ships leaving for distant systems. Her heart ached with questions she could not ask aloud. Was her empire truly strong, or had it been built on fear and obedience? One afternoon, as she studied reports from the frontier, her guard captain Kale entered the room. His expression was grim. "Princess, there have been more uprisings in the border systems," he said. "The miners on Asterbelt 7 have refused to send their shipments. They say the taxes are too heavy." Arya looked up from the screen. "How many uprisings this month?" "5, Kale answered. "And the governors want to send troops to restore order." Arya frowned. "More soldiers will not bring peace. It will only make the people hate us more." Gale hesitated. "With respect, Princess, your father ruled with strength. The people obeyed because they feared him. Since you took the throne, they think the empire has grown soft." Arya's voice turned cold. "Then they do not understand the kind of strength I wish to build." Kale lowered his head. "As you command, Princess." When he left, Arya sat in silence. The palace walls felt like a cage. She remembered the human settlement again, the way Rian had worked beside the colonists, never demanding, only guiding. That memory gave her courage. She decided to act differently. She called for a meeting of her council the next day. The grand chamber filled with high-ranking ministers, scientists, and admirals. They expected another speech about power and control. Instead, Arya stood at the center and said something none of them expected. "Our empire is breaking," she began. "We have wealth, but no trust. We have soldiers, but no loyalty. We speak of unity, but our people live in fear." The ministers exchanged confused glances. The Admiral of Defense spoke. "Princess, with respect, our fleets are stronger than ever. We have peace across half the sectors." Arya shook her head. "Peace built on silence is not real. If people obey only because they fear punishment, then that peace will not last." The Minister of Commerce frowned. "Then what do you suggest, Princess? Do we lower taxes and let the miners rule themselves?" Arya looked at him calmly. "I suggest we listen. Send envoys to speak with the workers. Ask what they need. Let us rebuild trust before we rebuild control." The room fell quiet. No one spoke for a long moment. Then whispers began to spread among the council. Some thought she had lost her resolve. Others secretly admired her courage to speak so boldly. After the meeting, Kale approached her. "Princess, you are changing the heart of the empire. But it will not be easy. Many will resist you." Arya smiled faintly. Change never is. That evening, she opened a private message channel and sent a transmission to Colony Haven. It had been several weeks since she left, but she hoped the human settlement was still functioning well. To her surprise, Rian himself appeared on the screen. He was standing inside a workshop, his face covered in dust. Behind him, several colonists worked on repairing a generator. When he saw her, he nodded politely. "Princess Arya," he said, "I did not expect your message." "I did not expect to send one," she replied with a small smile. "But I wanted to thank you. Your people have given me a new way to see the world. I am trying to change my empire." Rian looked thoughtful. "That will take time." "I know," she said. "But I will not stop trying." Before the message ended, she asked him one more question. "Tell me, Rian, what do your people do when their leaders fail them?" Rian wiped his hands on a cloth and said, "They stand up and lead themselves. A true leader is not one who commands, but one who reminds others that they have strength too." Arya nodded slowly. "I will remember that." When the message ended, she sat in silence for a long time. The words felt heavy in her mind, but also bright with hope. Weeks passed. The changes she ordered began to take root. Taxes were reduced. The governors were instructed to open councils where citizens could speak freely. At first, the nobles mocked her ideas. They said kindness was weakness. But soon, reports began to show that production was rising and rebellions were calming. The people were responding not with fear, but with loyalty. However, not everyone welcomed this change. Deep within the halls of the old military command, a group of admirals met in secret. They were angry at the new direction. "She is destroying our legacy," one of them said. "The empire was built on power. If she continues, we will lose control." Another added, "The fleets will stand with us if we act now." Their leader, Admiral Varen, a man known for his ambition, leaned forward. "Then we act. The princess has forgotten what made the Varens strong. If she refuses to protect the empire, we will do it for her." They began to plan. Back in the palace, Arya noticed subtle changes. Some of her messages went unanswered. Some orders took longer to carry out. Kale grew worried. "There are whispers among the fleet," he told her. "Admiral Varen has been seen meeting with old generals." Arya's eyes hardened. "Prepare the royal guard. If they plan to move against me, I will not run." She tried to contact Rian again, but the frontier communication lines were weak. The message did not go through. She wanted to ask his advice, but she knew she might have to face this test alone. A week later, the rebellion began. Admiral Varen declared that the princess was unfit to rule and sent fleets to seize control of the capital. Explosions shook the outer docks as loyal and rebel ships clashed in orbit. Alarms echoed across the palace. Kale rushed into the throne room. "Princess, the fleet is turning against us. We must evacuate." Arya stood firm. "If I flee now, the people will believe their leaders abandoned them. No, I will stay." Kale clenched his fists. "Then I will stay too." The palace guards took positions at the gates. Outside, the night sky burned with trails of fire from ships entering the atmosphere. The rebellion had begun in full force. Hours passed. The city trembled with chaos. Yet even as power flickered and walls shook, Arya refused to hide. She stood on the balcony once more, looking at the burning sky. For the first time, she did not feel fear. She felt clarity. Her people were fighting because of the same pride she had once carried, pride that blinded them to truth. If she was to save them, she had to show them another way. She turned to Kale. "Send a transmission to all channels. I want to speak to the entire empire." He hesitated. "The signal towers are damaged, Princess. It may not reach every world." "Then it will reach enough," she said. Moments later, her image appeared on every working screen across the empire. She stood without armor, her crown removed, her voice calm and strong. "My people," she began. "For too long we have mistaken fear for order and pride for strength. I once believed that power came from control, but I was wrong. True strength comes from those who build, who protect, and who hope." Her eyes burned with conviction. "You fight in my name, but I ask you to stop. I will not rule through fear. I will rule through trust. If that makes me weak, then let weakness be our new strength." Across the empire, soldiers paused. Some lowered their weapons. Others listened in silence. The words cut deeper than any command. Admiral Varen watched the broadcast from his command ship. His crew looked uncertain. For a moment, he saw doubt in their eyes. He slammed his hand on the control panel, ordering them to continue the attack. But before he could finish, several of his officers turned against him, refusing to fire. The The rebellion began to crumble from within. By morning, the fighting had stopped. The loyal fleets regained control, and Admiral Varenne was arrested. The city was damaged, but the people were safe. When the sun rose over the capital, Arya stood on her balcony once more. Cale approached, his armor scratched and his eyes tired. "It is over, princess," he said. Arya looked at the city below. Smoke still rose from some towers, but she saw citizens helping each other in the streets. Soldiers were rebuilding walls instead of guarding them. "No," she said softly. "It is only beginning." She turned to Cale. "Send word to the frontier colonies. I want to rebuild the empire not as a throne but as a home for all who seek peace. And send a message to Rian if you can. Tell him the lesson he gave me has saved a world." That night, the first transport of aid ships left the capital, carrying supplies not for war, but for recovery. The people of the Varan Empire began to believe again, not in fear, but in hope and far away on a gray frontier world. A simple human warrior looked at the stars and smiled, unaware that his quiet words had just changed an empire forever. The world of Colony Haven had grown stronger in the months since Princess Arya's visit. The people worked harder, and their community expanded beyond the rocky plains into the valleys below. Simple metal homes turned into sturdy shelters. Small farms sprouted on the dusty soil, and the air carried the sound of laughter instead of silence. Rian watched the colony thrive with quiet pride. He had never been a leader by title, but the colonists trusted him. They followed his example because he worked beside them. He lifted the same heavy beams, fixed the same broken machines, and ate the same plain meals. His belief was simple. Strength was not about ruling others, but standing with them. Every morning, he walked the perimeter of the colony, inspecting the power walls and watchtowers. The people greeted him with respect, some with grateful smiles. The children who once hid behind their parents now ran to him, showing him their small wooden toys and asking questions about life among the stars. One day, as he repaired a damaged antenna on the roof of the main hub, Lena, the young mechanic, approached him. She carried a communication pad in her hands and looked both nervous and excited. "Rian," she said, "we have a message. It came through the long-range relay. It's from the Varan capital." Rian climbed down from the roof, wiping his hands on a cloth. "From the princess?" Lena nodded. "Yes, she says she wants to visit again. She's bringing a delegation." Rian was silent for a moment. The last time Arya had come, she was full of pride and questions. Now, after hearing that her empire had survived rebellion and that she had spoken for peace, he wondered what kind of leader she had become. "When will she arrive?" he asked. "Tomorrow," Lena replied. "Her ship is already on approach." The next morning, the entire colony gathered near the landing field. The gray dust swirled around their feet as the bright silver cruiser descended through the clouds. The ship's engines glowed softly, and its sleek design reflected the rising sun. When the ramp lowered, Princess Arya stepped out, followed by a small group of aides and guards. This time, she wore no crown. Her armor was simple, meant for travel, not ceremony. Her silver eyes held warmth instead of pride. When she saw Rian among the crowd, she smiled and walked toward him. "Rian," she said with quiet respect. "It is good to see you again. You made it through dark times," he replied. "That is good to see," Arya nodded. "Your words guided me more than you know. The rebellion has ended. The empire is healing. But I came here not as a ruler, but as a student." The colonists bowed slightly, unsure how to behave in front of royalty. Arya gestured for them to rise. "Please," she said. "I came to learn, not to command." Over the next few days, Arya stayed in the colony as a guest. She lived in a small room near the workshop, refusing any luxury. She ate the same food as the colonists and joined them during their work hours. She asked questions about their farming systems, their energy grids, how they made decisions together. Rian watched her closely. She no longer carried herself with arrogance. Her steps were steady, her tone humble. When the workers spoke to her, she listened carefully. When the children ran around her, she smiled and joined their games. On the fourth day, a storm rolled in from the northern ridge. The colony was prepared for strong winds, but this storm was unlike any they had seen before. The sky darkened, and flashes of lightning tore through the clouds. The power shields flickered as the energy fields struggled to hold against the force of the wind. Rian and Lena ran to the control center to stabilize the grid. "The wind is overloading the main converter," Lena shouted. "If it fails, the shields will drop." "Divert power from the secondary systems," Rian said, his voice steady. The storm raged outside, shaking the buildings. The colonists gathered in the main hall, securing doors and windows. Arya helped move equipment and calm the frightened children. She looked out the window and saw Rian running through the storm toward the power station, his coat whipping in the wind. Without hesitation, she followed him. Kale, her guard captain, tried to stop her. "Princess, it's too dangerous." She turned to him and said firmly, "If he can face danger to protect these people, then so can I." The power station was half buried in dust and debris when she reached it. Rian was already inside, fighting against failing systems. Sparks flew from broken circuits, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt metal. "Rian," Arya called out. "Tell me what to do." He looked up, surprised but not angry. "Take the manual override on the left. Turn it until the red light flashes." She rushed to obey. Her hands trembled, but she kept turning the valve. The lights flickered and then stabilized. The generator roared back to life, sending power to the shields. Rian smiled. "You did it." Arya wiped sweat from her brow. "No, we did it." When they returned to the hall, the storm began to fade. The colonists cheered when the lights stayed on. The shields held. No one was hurt. For a long moment, everyone simply stood together, relieved and grateful. Later that night, the colony celebrated. Simple music played, and the people shared what food they had. Rian sat near the fire pit, his face lit by the warm glow. Arya joined him, holding a cup of tea. "You worked as if you were one of them," Rian said. "I am one of them," she answered softly. "A leader is still part of the people." "I learned that from you." Rian looked into the fire. "When I left the summit, I was tired of words. I thought peace was just something people talked about but never lived. Here I saw that even small acts matter. You proved that change can reach even the highest halls." Arya smiled. "You showed me that strength is not armor or title. It is heart. It is the will to keep building, even when everything falls apart." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the laughter around them. Then Rian said, "Your empire will need you to be both steel and flesh. Hard enough to protect, soft enough to understand." Arya nodded. "That is the lesson I came here to learn." The next morning, just as the sun rose, a distress signal reached the colony. Lena ran to Rian with a worried look. "It's from a nearby settlement on Vega Outpost. They're under attack by raiders." Rian's expression hardened. "How many?" "About 10 ships," she said. "They are demanding supplies." Arya stepped forward. "Let me help. I have my cruiser and guards." Rian looked at her. "This is not your war." Arya shook her head. "It is not war. It is duty. You once told me true strength is protecting others. Let me prove I understand." Within an hour, Arya's cruiser and 2 colony ships lifted off. The Vega outpost was only a few light hours away. When they arrived, the small settlement was already burning under the raider assault. The attackers' ships hovered above the ground, firing at storage tanks. Rian commanded the defense. "Divert their attention. Protect the civilians." Arya took control of her ship's shields and directed her guards to assist on the ground. She moved with calm precision, no longer a princess giving orders from a throne, but a leader fighting beside her people. The colonists and guards worked together, pushing back the raiders with non-lethal weapons. The battle was short but intense. When the raiders realized they were outnumbered, they fled into space. When the dust settled, Rian walked through the damaged streets, helping lift fallen beams. Arya followed, carrying medical supplies. The settlers thanked her, calling her the Silver Protector. As the sun set, she turned to Rian. "Now I understand. This is what courage means. It is not standing above others, but standing with them, Rian looked at her with respect. You learned faster than most. I had a good teacher, she said. They returned to Haven the next day. The colony greeted them as heroes, though neither Arya nor Rian sought praise. They knew their victory was not about power, but about unity. That evening, as the stars rose high above, Arya stood outside the colony walls. Rian joined her. Will you go back to your empire soon? He asked. Yes, she said. There is much to rebuild, but I will not rebuild it as it was. I will create something new. A home for both my people and others who seek peace. Rian nodded. Then the lesson is complete. Arya turned to him. Not yet. You once took off your armor and left. Now I ask, will you return to the stars again? Rian smiled. Only when there is something worth protecting. You will always have a place in my world, she said, and you will always have a friend in mine, he replied. They stood together in silence. Watching the stars, the galaxy stretched wide before them, full of challenges and hope. They had both changed. The warrior had found peace in simplicity, and the princess had found strength in humility. In that quiet moment under the silver sky, they knew that the lesson of steel and flesh was not about war or power, but about understanding. The armor of metal could protect the body, but only the armor of the heart could protect the soul. Rian stood at the edge of the floating city of Varelia, the soft glow of the alien sun reflecting off the glassy structures. The wind carried a faint scent of the alien flora below, sweet but unfamiliar. He felt the weight of the past days pressing on him, the tension, the duels, and the lessons learned. His armor, once a shield and a symbol, had been left behind. He had faced the alien warriors as himself, relying only on his mind, his instincts, and his courage. That choice had changed everything. Princess Ysera appeared beside him, her eyes reflecting both pride and thoughtfulness. She had spent the last hours walking through the city, speaking with her people, watching how they responded to Rian's victory. Their whispers had been filled with surprise, admiration, and curiosity. The human warrior who had dared to face their greatest fighters without armor had earned a place in their stories. You will leave soon, Ysera said softly, her voice carrying a mix of respect and lingering challenge. Rian nodded. Yes, my mission here is done, but I hope what we've shared will last longer than my visit. She looked away for a moment, gazing at the floating gardens that drifted like islands in the sky. You have shown us much, not just skill, but honor. Humans have a strength we did not expect. I misjudged your people, Rian smiled slightly. Judgment comes quickly, but understanding takes time. I believe your people are capable of great things, Ysera, and you as their leader can guide them to even more. The princess turned back to him. Her usual pride softened into something more genuine. Perhaps I have more to learn than I thought. You leave an impression that will not be forgotten. As they walked together toward the docking platform, Rian thought about the journey. Every moment, every duel, and every insult had led to this point. His choice to leave his armor behind had been risky, but it had shown the aliens the essence of human courage. He realized that his mission was never about defeating them in battle. It was about proving that humans could meet any challenge with honor and intelligence. The city below stretched endlessly. Towers of glass and metal floated above the green forests, connected by translucent bridges. The people watched from balconies, their faces filled with curiosity and respect. Children mimicked Rian's movements, hoping to learn from his agility. Adults spoke quietly, analyzing his strategies and the way he faced challenges. He had left a mark on their society, a new vision of what strength truly meant. Ysera stopped at the edge of the platform, looking at the approaching human shuttle. It hovered quietly, engines humming with soft power. Rian stepped forward, his movements deliberate, confident, and unburdened by armor. He could feel the breeze against his skin, the warmth of the sun on his face, and the quiet excitement in his heart. Leaving behind the tools that had once defined him, he felt free, light, and alive. You will be remembered here, Ysera said. Not just as a warrior, but as a symbol. A symbol that strength comes in many forms. Rian nodded. Symbols are only as strong as the actions that create them. I hope your people carry what we have learned together. The shuttle doors opened, and Rian paused for a moment. He turned back to the princess. Thank you, Asera, for everything. Your people have taught me as much as I have taught them. She inclined her head, her expression thoughtful. And you have shown us that courage is not measured by armor or weapons, but by will and wisdom. Perhaps one day, our people will meet again, not as strangers, but as equals. Rian stepped into the shuttle. He looked back at the city one last time. The floating towers shimmered in the sunlight, the bridges connecting them like threads of light. The people of Aurelia were watching, and he knew they were thinking, learning, and remembering. His heart swelled with quiet pride. This was not a victory of battle alone, but a victory of understanding, respect, and the human spirit inside the shuttle. Rian removed the last piece of his equipment, leaving it in the storage compartment. He wanted to return to Earth as a human, not just as a soldier. His body and mind were his own weapons, his own strengths. As the shuttle lifted into the sky, he felt the city of Aurelia grow smaller below him. But the impact of his actions felt larger than anything he had known. Princess Asera watched from the platform as the shuttle ascended. She felt a new sense of responsibility. Her people had learned something vital through this human warrior. Prejudice had been replaced with curiosity. Fear had been replaced with respect. And pride had been replaced with understanding. She realized that leadership meant more than control or tradition. It meant guiding her people to see beyond what was familiar, to embrace what was different, and to learn from it. Back in the shuttle, Rian reflected on the events of the past days. Every insult, every challenge, and every duel had tested him in ways he had never imagined. Yet, through it all, he had remained true to himself. He had shown that humans could adapt, overcome, and inspire. He thought of the children who had watched him, their eyes wide with wonder. He thought of the adults, analyzing his every move. And he thought of Asara, the princess who had challenged him and in doing so allowed him to show the essence of humanity. The shuttle moved away from Aurelia at a steady pace. Stars appeared as the planet faded into the distance. Rian felt a quiet peace. His journey had been dangerous, uncertain, and full of challenges, but it had also been meaningful. He had not just represented humanity, he had represented courage, wisdom, and the potential for cooperation between worlds. Asera returned to her city, walking among her people. She spoke with leaders, warriors, and scholars. Sharing what she had learned from Rian, the stories of the human warrior spread quickly, not as tales of conquest, but as lessons of respect, ingenuity, and honor. The people of Aurelia began to see that strength could take many forms, and that understanding and collaboration were as important as skill and power. Days passed. Rian returned to Earth, where he was welcomed not just as a soldier, but as a messenger of hope and unity. His report to human leaders emphasized what he had learned from Aurelia. He spoke not of battles won, but of trust earned, lessons shared, and bridges built. The humans listened, understanding that the galaxy was larger than their own ambitions, and that respect for other civilizations was essential. Meanwhile, on Aurelia, Asera implemented changes in her society. She encouraged warriors to train with humans, sharing techniques and strategies. Scholars began studying Earth culture and technology, seeking to understand their new allies. And children played games inspired by Rian's duels, learning that bravery and intelligence were more valuable than armor and weapons. Though Rian and Asera were separated by distance, a bond had formed that transcended worlds. Mutual respect had replaced suspicion. Cooperation had replaced fear, and understanding had replaced prejudice. Both humans and Varelians looked to the future with hope, knowing that one day they could work together for exploration, knowledge, and peace in the quiet of space. Rian looked out of the shuttle window at the stars. Each one represented a world, a civilization, a challenge. He smiled, knowing that humanity's strength was not just in its technology or power, but in its courage, wisdom, and heart. The galaxy was vast, and adventure awaited. But the lessons of Aurelia would remain with him always. The story ended not with conflict, but with promise. Humans and Varelians had learned to respect one another. The future was uncertain, but it was bright. And somewhere in the stars, a warrior who had removed his armor walked proudly, not as a machine but as a human, a symbol of hope, courage, and unity.